Hello, I'm Sharon Benjamin. I'm the host of Leafless, Not Lifeless. I am so glad that you decided to join me. We have an amazing show in place. Listen, did you know that when the leaves fall from the trees, they're not just there falling? In the autumn, it is beautiful, but guess what? If they did not fall from the trees, then new life could not come about. Did you know that? I learned it from Encyclopedia Britannica. All right, so this is what happens. When the leaves fall, they help to produce. But let me just tell you, before that happens, evergreen trees have wax and resin that it protects their leaves. However, deciduous trees, the leaves are so thin, they have to fall. Now, if they did not fall, remember from science, water expands when it freezes. If the leaves didn't fall, the water would expand and it would damage the leaf cells, which would prevent photosynthesis. Isn't that amazing? So when they fall, they don't just fall and die, but they help other plants to produce. So that's what this is all about. Now, you might have found yourself sometime in what looked like a leafless situation. My guest today is quite interesting. What would you do if you aged out of foster care? You got married, had 3 children, had some other life downturns. Would you throw in the towel, throw up your hands, throw in the towel? Well, think about some of the things I mentioned actually happened to our next guest. However, she did something different. She didn't throw in the towel. She didn't throw up her hands. She did something else. So she is doing some amazing work, not just for herself, but like those leaves that fail, she's also helping others to grow and develop as she continues to grow and develop. So Lisa Pierce, thank you so much. Kudos to you.
Thank you so much.
much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
I am so.
I love what you talked about with the leaves because nature teaches us so many lessons.
Yeah.
And I actually do a training module called pruning.
Oh,
and
awesome.
So we were discussing why are some fruits more expensive than other fruits. And so apples, cherries, pears, those fruits tend to be more expensive because of the arduous process of pruning. To date, at least, they haven't come up with a way for technology to prune fruit. So it's still something that has to be done manually by people. And, so it's just a process of, removing debris and insects and branches, overgrown branches to make room for the apple to grow.
That is a great segue, Lisa,
yeah.
into my getting you to tell us just a little bit about yourself. Because as we sit here today, this is not where you started.
No. Oh, goodness, no. So as you shared, my sister and I, we were abandoned at the courthouse. My mom and stepfather had to appear before a judge because, abuse and neglect of children, it starts to show itself over time. And one of the ways it shows itself is that if you, physically abuse a child or neglect a child, it's not likely that you're dressing that child and bathing that, And so when children show up at school like that, it sends a flag. And so that's how we were showing up at school. And so my mom had to, go to court and answer to these allegations. And this was in the early 1980s when the laws were different. And so child abuse, people find this hard to believe, but child abuse at one point was not a crime.
Isn't that
They looked at,
interesting?
they looked at it as a social determinant, that this is something that, what goes on in this house stays in this house. But then in the mid 80s and the 90s, children started dying at the hands of their caregivers.
So Lisa, you say they started dying, but with it having not been a law, they probably were
Yeah,
before.
yeah. It just kept happening.
Yes.
And, and so whenever, I have students that they have this idea that the law is something negative. And I explain to them that the law is designed to keep order, right? You
Yes.
can't let unstable people just have free range.
Exactly. So what
Excuse
happened?
me.
So what
Mhm.
happened with you all, you and your sister?
So I just remember, I was telling someone this recently. I just remember how the officials in the courthouse were scrambling, because we went on a recess and our mom and stepfather, they went outside or something and they never came back, right? So, the court just kind of put it to the side. But then I remember when they start turning the lights out in the hall, and it's like they were like they just didn't know what to do. So finally they determined that we were abandoned. And so we were placed in an emergency shelter, like a group home for children. And but it's so funny how children think.
Yes.
To the adults, this was an outrage.
Yes.
But to us, it was amazing because we had never had McDonald's before, and the bailiff bought us McDonald's, and it was like, wow, like, and but even when we went to the group home, we didn't know what was going on. But to see sheets on a bed, to see pillows, like we slept on a mattress on the floor.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as menacing as it sounds, for
So
us.
yes, so your situation seems as if it ended up being better than the prior. But you've
It did.
talked about, so your foster care situation. Tell us a little bit about that before you
Well,
moved out.
foster care, I can only speak for mine.
Mhm.
My foster care experience was amazing. You know, fear can positively affect your behavior or negatively, right? So, our stepfather put the fear of God in us, like just unmitigating fear that we conformed, right? We were girls that listened. We followed directions. We never cut school. We were never behavior problems. And so that landed us in a wonderful foster care situation. And but back then, kids aged out at 18.
And what
So
happened
with
after that?
no family, no support, you know, um, no prospects of nothing, we aged out right into poverty.
Mm.
And my sister, she got pregnant with my nephew, and she was very fortunate that she got to go live with him and his family. And so I went to an amazing high school. And so my high school guidance counselor, like there was no plan for me. So they kind of piecemeal together for me to get into college. And so I got accepted into Virginia State University. But once again, a child away from home, away from their home state,
Yes,
definitely needs support.
exactly.
And so
So you were still being put in a situation or in situations where you needed.
untenable,
Yes, yes.
untenable.
So what
So
happened
I came,
between that time and leading up to other monumental moments in your life?
well, I went back home for the summer, got a little summer job with a temp agency, and I met someone at that job. And I ended up marrying that person, you know, not knowing what it is to be a mother, or definitely not knowing what it is to be a wife. And so we lived with his parents, and it's just something about an untrained woman, a
Yeah.
woman that knows nothing. I knew nothing. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to clean. I didn't know anything about being a wife or mother. All I knew was how to have sex. That's all I knew.
Yes.
From the abuse, from, you know, and it's so interesting. I never forget one day my husband and I got into an argument, and I just figured, let's go have sex, because when we were abused, that's what got our stepfather to stop beating us. So you either got beaten or you had sex. But in a underdeveloped mind,
Yes.
you
Yes.
think that that's how you solve problems, and it's not.
Yes. So
And I
you
never,
were,
when my
you
husband said, "No, we're gonna have a discussion.
uh
You
so
know, we're
you
not
were,
gonna, you know."
yes, so you
And
were
so
married for how long?
after a while, the 3 kids came so fast that after a while, you know, when I look back on it, my husband was raising 4 children. And so at 23 years old, he did what a 23-year-old does, and that's he left.
And where did that
And I
leave you?
think, I'm sorry,
And where did that leave you and the 3 children?
that left me once again with no skills, no education, no training, and so no ability to take care of the children. So now you're in survival mode. So you shoplift to eat. You get food stamps, but you either sell them or you blow them, you know. So it was just it became a wilderness. And it wasn't until um the children got taken, as they should have,
And
you know.
did that open your eyes?
It opened my eyes, but not in a way that people, and I teach my students that go through this, you have to launch the correct battle. Don't launch a war that you're not going to win. So a lot of my students who lose custody of their kids, they wage a war against the social workers, the judges, you know, law enforcement. No, that's not the war you want to wage. So I didn't do that.
Lisa, I
I
have a
waged a
question.
war against me.
All right, so, but Lisa, when you talk about all the things you had gone through, there must have been something in you, because the point that you just made now, you started to look inward. What triggered that, do you think?
So what triggered me looking inwardly was that I had never had a quiet house. So my kids are back to back in age. So right now they're 30, 31, and 32. So when they got taken, you know, they were very young. And so one of these busy houses where you're stop running up and down the steps, stop all that noise. But my house became deadly silent. And I was either gonna lose my mind, or I was going to find a way, because it's funny, in that moment, I discovered how I like the noisy house, right? Like and
Listen, after all.
yeah, it wasn't so bad. And so, um, once again, when you're untrained, see, there was nobody to say, no, don't do it like this, do it like this. And so I just was on an island, kind of like just by myself trying to survive. And so I already had anger issues.
Yes.
And so I learned that anger comes from unmitigated disappointment. So when you're disappointed about something, unless you work through it, it turns to anger. And
Yes.
so that landed me into counseling, which was the best thing I ever did in my life, was go to counseling. And I went to counseling, and I learned tools. People think that counseling is,
A bad thing.
something negative. No,
Exactly.
counseling is designed to teach you tools.
Yes. So
And
Lisa, you've come through that. So after the counseling, how much of an impact did that have on your moving forward?
so the counseling was significant because one of the things I couldn't do is finish things that I started. I would lose motivation because I had no patience. I wanted something that takes 2 years to do. I wanted it done in 45 days. So counseling helped me to understand that the best cooked meal is a slow cooked meal. And, I learned in counseling what advantage and what value not only going to school, because I always wanted to go to school. And so um, with those tools in that toolbox I learned from counseling, I started on a path to rebuild my life. And I had to do it in intervals of a 5-year plan that I had to break down in 30-day intervals.
So Lisa, now you're at this point and you're getting ready to go to school, or you're going to school, and you have now received, I see some awards behind you and some diplomas and all. So with all of this, while some would look at you and think about your situation as nothing's going to come of this because there are no leaves. However, you actually came forth and you have some degrees now, and you're working on some programs. You've started a number of things. Tell us about some of what you've done. And
So
go ahead.
what I did by 2009, I had gotten back into school. And like I said, I just loved school. And I graduated in 2013, and I picked up the phone and I called the local Department of Social Services, and I wanted to mentor some women. But I wanted to mentor some women like me, some women who are angry, disappointed. And so uh, the gentleman that answered the phone, and, talk about destiny and faith. Uh, he was the executive director of the workforce board for the Department of Social Services, but his secretary had called out that day. So he would never have answered the phone. And he answered the phone and he said, well, I told him, I said, I've been on welfare about 15 times. And because of my own recklessness, because of my own inability to get a job and learn what work is and to thrive at a job. And so I wanted to volunteer to teach some other women. And so he verified that I was on welfare. And he said, you were just here. I said, I know. He said, wow, and you got a degree already? And I said, yeah. I said, I have a 5-year plan that I live out in 30-day intervals. And I have these tasks that must be completed within those 30 days. And so that's how I was able to just kind of catapult, forward. And he said, I'm sorry, I can't let you volunteer, but I'll give you a contract. And I didn't even know anything about that. Like I was clueless. And I did medical billing and coding. And it was the first time with all those tools from that toolbox. It was the first time that I finished something I started.
Well, Lisa, now you do, we won't have time to list all of the things that you've done and all that you're doing, but there is one in particular, and we'll be able to talk about some more, but your Celebrate program.
Yes.
Tell us
So
about that one.
in counseling, I learned about how celebrating someone validates them. When you're not affirmed or validated as a child, it's like your fence being torn. And whenever a fence, if you look at a house where the fence is torn down, it's probably dilapidated, abandoned, and torn down because everything comes in. That's what happens when you don't celebrate people. And so I decided that I was going to build a company that celebrates families, celebrate them with gifting, celebrate them with events, and celebrate them through work. Because the greatest celebration or the greatest gift you can give a family is the ability to be provided for. And so I started this little teeny program that is now in 4 states. And I'm just so thrilled about that, because people hurt no matter what zip code they live in.
True.
And if you can come up with a solution on how to help people to heal and thrive, you know, you're gonna matter to the masses, you know, so to speak.
And now you do something else. You also do something with the reentry.
Oh, yes. So, of course, in my wilderness, I went to prison. And one of the things that individuals who've been in the reentry and the penal system, they don't understand why they are so misunderstood. So, you know, my reentry program helps them to understand that one of the reasons your aunt does not talk to you is because your family was struggling even before you went to prison. And you went to prison, and now your family got to take care of your kids. And so that, you know, and you would be so surprised. The reentry students that come to me and say, Miss Lisa, thank you. Thank you so much. So they all have to learn in my class how to write an apology letter. And they have to find someone, you know, who they thought misunderstood them, but it was in fact the student. It wasn't them. And they got to write an apology letter. And, you know, and because when we're in our wilderness, we think it's all about us, all about me, my problems, and what I need. And that's not it. And so one of the signature features of Celebrate Us is how to make it about someone else instead of making it about you.
And you do, as I said, the list is long, and I am so excited about it. I'm inspired and motivated. I hope the viewers and listeners are as well. And something that I appreciate that you do is that you see the value in people.
Oh, yeah.
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 For example, there are some young men that you saw who were watching.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes. So I don't know if this happens in every city, but in our city, you know, you have these kids, when you get to the red light, they just kind of, you know, come up to your vehicle and just start cleaning it to get a couple of dollars. And so on my way from the university every evening, you know, they would wash my car. Now I have like a cool car. I have a white Range Rover, and it's always filthy. And so, so, you know, they would see me coming. And so I decided to start a, you know, conversation with them as they clean. And so I would give them money, and I would say, look, I teach right down there. You can walk right there. And but they were so intimidated because it was a college campus. And they said, well, they're not going to let us in. I said, yes, they are. Just give the campus police my card. And this was during the summer. And so, you know, when the colder months went, you know, they went away. And one day they just popped up in my classroom, and I cried. And but it was also so painful of how they had to stick together. They loved each other. If one of them ate, you would see them. Like, I would have to put something in 4 chairs, because if they weren't able to sit together, they would leave.
Oh,
they would leave because it was important for them to stay together. And so
yes.
One of the students was disabled, and he didn't have a coat, and they took their panhandling money and bought him a coat. And it was just so wonderful that they and the class on campus was 6 weeks long, and they stayed.
They stayed. Wow.
They stayed, and they transitioned into occupational training, and they unfortunately COVID came, so I handed them off to the community college in the different trades.
Yes.
But what people don't know is I would do things to make them feel good. Like when they would do such a good job on my truck, I would let them take pictures in front of it. And it was so
Oh,
hilarious. They went on Facebook Live one day and they was like, you know, introduced me as one of their preferred customers. And it was hilarious. And so I built a relationship of trust with them.
and you know, something you just said, the word that you just used, relationship.
Yeah.
That is so important, and making people feel valued. And
Yeah.
all of this that you're doing is making people feel valued because every person is
Yeah. And they're
valuable.
not the boogeyman.
Exactly.
They're
That's
not
true.
going to rob anyone. They're kids.
Yes, and they're trying to make an honest
Yeah.
go for it. So that is amazing. I am just so, I'm excited. I am impressed. Lisa, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I would love to hear from everyone. I'm a chatty catty, so they can find me on LinkedIn, Lisa Pierce, on Instagram as Celebrate Us Careers, hashtag Celebrate Us Careers, and on Facebook it's Celebrate Us Workforce Training is my business page, and then Lisa Pierce is my personal page.
Thank you, Lisa, so much, so much, so much for
Thank you so
being
much for
a
having
guest
me.
on
This is really
Leafless,
nice. Thank you.
Not Lifeless. I am so excited. Thank you so much. Listen, and thank you, viewers and listeners, for being with me today for this episode of Leafless, Not Lifeless. Do you have a story? Do you have a leafless situation, but you're growing and developing and you are actually producing? I'd like to hear from you. Send me your information at leaflessnotlifeless@gmail.com. I'd love to share your story as well, and send me comments. Join us the next time for the next episode of Leafless, Not Lifeless. Thank you so much again for listening and viewing. See you next time for Leafless, Not Lifeless.